Grace to you and peace from God our Father and our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. I stumbled onto a website this past week that would show pictures of celebrities when they just started their career and later in their life, current time. It is fascinating to see what happens to people with privileged lives who are invited to parties and eat rich foods and have expensive dental work done and go to tanning salons and have tweaks in surgical procedures here and there. It's fascinating because a lot of times the before and after picture, it looks like you're looking at two totally different individuals. Sometimes it's a little scary what has come out from these people. But what bothered me more than the before and after pictures of what these individuals look like is what happens to some of these people's lives. It doesn't take much for something to go south in somebody and have things just simply crumble apart, where their life just simply disintegrates and they sort of fade away. These people who once had incredible promise just sort of lose it all. Somebody that I think of is Elvis Presley. I mean, Elvis Presley was this talented, charismatic, good-looking young man who had the world in the palm of his hand. And then years later, he became a sad caricature of himself. Lately, I've been thinking about two things that go hand in hand together. The first thing I've been thinking about is retirement. Not my own. I'm a long way from retirement. But I had a brother retire this summer, which threw me for a loop because I only thought old people retired and he's not that old. But the reality, of course, is that every day in the United States, 10,000 people turn 65. An estimated 60% of those people will retire when they're 65. That means on any given day, 6,000 people are retiring. Isn't that fascinating? And the significance of this is that within our church community, over the last couple of years, this year included, but a couple of years to come, lots of folks are retiring. Pretty amazing. A lot of people turning old right in front of my eyes. The other thing I've been thinking about is the challenge of getting older, of continuing life, especially into those golden years, where we see the finish line, and we know that there will come a time when we have to pass over that finish line. My question that I struggle with is, how are we doing with that? Because there are a lot of challenges with getting older, aren't there? I mean, there's medical challenges, there are financial stresses, there's relational issues, and maybe the hardest one is having to deal with grief. Grief as people that you love so deeply begin to pass away. Because one of our retired folks reminded me this past week, and I saw this person in a doctor's office. She said, "Gotta remember, Pastor, old age isn't for sissies." Yet I wonder, what is it that God has to teach us about advancing in years, of getting older, and of seeing that finish line? What does God have to teach us? That's why I love this story about Caleb in the book of Joshua. Now, if you were here last week, you might remember our focus was upon Rahab, the harlot. And Rahab had a couple of spies come visit her. She lived in Jericho, and these spies were the Israelite spies coming into the promised land to kind of check out everything before the Israelites come in. And if you remember, last week I told you that this is the second time that spies were sent into the promised land by the Israelites. The first time this happened was 40 years before, and Caleb was one of those 12 spies. But of those 12, only Caleb and Joshua thought it was a good idea for the people of God to advance into the promised land. The other 10 spies were afraid. They saw the people who lived in the promised land, and they said that we are grasshoppers unto them. They are giants, and we ought not to go into the promised land. In fact, better for us to go back to Egypt. And they persuaded the people to turn back. There are a couple of things that I think about when I read the story of Caleb, things that I think God is teaching me, maybe teaching you as well. And the first thing is how important it is to have a positive faith in the goodness of God throughout your whole life. Caleb had a positive faith in the goodness of God throughout his whole life. Going back to the book of Numbers, the chapter that talks about the Israelites sending in those 12 spies, it tells that the first time that Caleb was invited to be the spy, and it says there's something different about Caleb. He has a different spirit. He wholeheartedly loves God and believes in him. The other spies and the whole people of God, they did not have Caleb's kind of faith. They were far more frightened. They were more motivated by fear than by faith, but not Caleb. He was a different sort of guy. And while the other spies saw the giants in the land, Caleb saw the promise of God. And when the other spies saw themselves as small in comparison to the huge people that lived there, Caleb looked at the greatness and the bigness of God to know that God could take care of any problem that they faced. The amazing thing is that when God got frustrated with the Israelites for their lack of faith and sent them back out into the desert to wander for another 40 years, Caleb had to suffer that punishment as well. And he does so without complaining. Do you remember when you were little kids? Did you ever get in trouble for something somebody else did? Did you ever get punished when somebody else did something bad but you were included in the punishment? What was your first thought? This isn't fair, right? This isn't fair. And Caleb had every right to say, this isn't fair. I mean, why should he have to suffer the same punishment as the other Israelites? The amazing thing is he does, without complaining, without whining. He gets on his donkey, heads back out into the wilderness for 40 years of wandering. So now in the reading today, Caleb is 85 years old. He's been wandering around in the desert for a long time. And you know what? He has the very same positive faith in the goodness of God that he did 40 years previous. Nothing worse than grumpy old men. Or grumpy old women, for that matter. When it comes to faithfulness, the only appropriate response is a positive faithfulness, an excitement and energy, a hopefulness and optimism for what God can do in you. Here's something I stumbled upon some years ago, and I jotted it down and kind of kept it in my journals. If you have a negative attitude and a small faith when you are 40 years old, chances are you will not have a negative faith and a small faith, or a negative attitude and small faith when you're 85. Because chances are you won't be alive when you're 85. Studies have been done. Great one done by a psychologist by the name of Martin Seligman. He went into a retirement community, a Christian retirement community, and he took all the residents, a large population of people, and he divided them up. On one side, he put faithful, energetic, optimistic people. In the other group, he put all of the complainers and the whiners and the people who didn't have a real strong, positive faith. And then he went away. And then about 12 years later, he came back and he studied these two groups. And he discovered that 90% of the people in this group were still alive. 34% of the people in this group were still alive. having a positive faith in the goodness of God, and optimism and excitement and energy over what God is doing and can do will literally allow you to live longer. So, by a show of hands, how many of you are happy to hear that? For those of you who do not have your hands up, you're in deep trouble. And you know what? I can't stress this enough, because I get a chance to see this lived out. This is such a blessing of a church to be in. Because if you are in your 80s or in your 90s, I got to tell you, you're my heroes. I absolutely look up to you. You're an absolute inspiration to this congregation as well. Because we don't have grumpy old people in this church. We have elders who are faithful and focused and have been so as long as I have known them, and my hunch is all of their lives. And if you are not 85, if you are 5 or 8 or 58 or anywhere in those numbers, you can choose to have a positive faith in the goodness of God. And I pray that you do. I really do. Because you need to have this by faith. The second thing that God is teaching me through Caleb is that you've got to have a challenge. Caleb had a challenge. I want to read again what Bernie read a few moments ago, because this is such a great line in the scriptures. Caleb says, "And now today, as you see, the Lord has kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years since the time that the Lord spoke this word to Moses, when Israel was journeying through the wilderness. And here I am today, 85 years old, and I'm still as strong today as I was on the day that Moses sent me. My strength now is as my strength was for war, for going out, for coming in. So now, give me that hill country of which the Lord spoke on that day." I'm not a military-minded person. Maybe you are. But let me ask you, if you were to go and do battle with a group of people, would you go after the people who live in the hill country or in a valley? Chances are you'd go after the valley people, wouldn't you? I mean, it's easier to descend on people than to have to climb a hill to get to them. Gravity's going to work on your favor. Your spears and your arrows are going to fly a whole lot better downhill than they will uphill. And if you have to attack people who live uphill, you have to do so very quietly, stealthily, so that they don't look down on you and see you coming. Caleb goes for the toughest challenge. He takes the toughest challenge, and who does he go after? He goes after the Anakites. These are the same people who, 40 years early, the spies said that they looked like giants to us as grasshoppers. The very same people. Israel's most formidable opponent. And Caleb goes for the toughest challenge. I want you to notice. Caleb doesn't sign up for a condo at the beach. He doesn't wish to drive around town in a golf cart. He's not looking for soft food. Caleb isn't looking for a retirement where he can rest and relax and watch Jeopardy and Dancing with the Stars. He's going for the toughest challenge. He wants the action. Marion Diamond is a neuroanatomist, which is somebody who studies the way brain waves work. She's at Cal Berkeley. She's done some fascinating studies in terms of regeneration of cells in the brain and the firing of synapses to see how it is that brains can be healthy and vital as people advance in age. What she does is she works with rats, which I assume is a lot like working with teenagers. And she puts them into two different groups. And in one group, she makes them go through a challenge in order to get their dinner. So they have to have some sort of obstacle course or some sort of test that they need to do. And every dinner is different. So every obstacle is different. The other group, she feeds those rats, but it's at the same time, the same day, the same TV dinner, the same style, everything is the same. Nothing changes. She just gives them the food. And what she's discovered is that those rats that have to work for their food are smarter. Their brain activity is sharper. And so she writes this. She says, in terms of successful aging, it is not enough to continue activities in the same groove year after year with the same expenditures of mental and physical energy. The brain requires new challenges if it is to remain a healthy and functioning organ. So now whenever I go visit my 88-year-old mother, I hide her dinner someplace in her house. And she complains a little bit, but it keeps her young. So I just need to tell you, there's no retirement in the church. No such thing. The word retirement doesn't show up in the Bible. There are people who retire from a particular vocation, but you do not retire from living out the challenges of a faith-filled life. And again, this is a unique church, because I've been a part of churches before where if you ask somebody who is 66 years old to take on a challenge, to do a ministry, to come up with something, they'll say, you know what, I'm retired now, I don't do that stuff anymore. But you people don't do that, which makes you different. Of course, you've known that you're different as well. There's no retirement when it comes to taking up the challenges and doing things for God. There's no retirement because God has blessed you with gifts and talents and resources to do things beyond yourself for the sake of the kingdom of God, and we've got to do those things. Until we die, we've got to do those things. So I'm just asking you this morning, what are the challenges that God has placed before you? What is the challenge that you're seeking to overcome? Not losing weight, not putting more money into the 401k, not going on a great vacation. No, what is the challenge for the sake of the kingdom of God that God is leading you to do? What hill country do you need to defeat? What mountains do you need to conquer? It's a really, really important question. A couple weeks ago, Leanne, my wife, and I visited Warren and Judy Brow, which many of you remember. They lived here in the Visalia in Exeter, actually, and they moved there after they retired from years of school administration. They moved there to live on a ranch and work hard on that ranch, but they're also great members of this church, and they were about as active as anybody has ever been in this church. They were involved in a lot of great things as leaders. So if you think that Warren and Judy sold their ranch in Exeter in order to move up to Placerville to kind of slow down a little bit and enjoy their retirement years, you'd be wrong. We visited them, and now they are in charge of the Stevens ministry at their new church. And I said to them, I didn't know that you guys were Stevens ministers. And they said, well, we didn't either. We just signed up one Sunday because they're asking for help, and now we're in charge of this ministry. It's just like Warren and Judy Brown. The last thing that I learned from God, in part by reading about Caleb, but not solely, is that God is always with us. I mean, for those who, like Caleb, have this wholehearted faith, this positive faith in the goodness of God, God reciprocates by always being with us. Caleb discovered that. But so also did all of those Israelites who were wandering around in the desert. Yes, God got frustrated with them. Mad at them too sometimes, but God never abandoned them. And then when I read in the New Testament how God was leading these 12 disciples to follow his son Jesus, and these disciples made mistake after mistake after mistake, God never fired them. God never abandoned them. God was always with them. And when I read about the activity in this new church, this young fledgling Christian church, and the work of St. Paul and Barnabas and Timothy and John on the island of Patmos, God was never abandoning his people. God was always with them. Always with them. And when I read the textbooks about the history of the church for 2,000 years and all the challenges and all the difficulties we've had, God has never abandoned us. God is always with us. And when I hear the stories of people like Jackie and others who tell me about what God is doing in their lives, the one consistent theme is God is always with us. God is always with you. Always with you. To strengthen you, to correct you, challenge you, to forgive you, to bless you, to discipline you, to lead you, to love you. God is with you. Always. To the very end. Never are you alone. Never. Every minute of your life, no, every millisecond of your life, God does not take his eye off of you. We might wonder sometimes if God is there. But God is there. God is always there. And for those whose faith is with God, God is with them. Throughout life, but especially in those final days, when we begin to get closer to that finishing line, when we find that our bodies are losing strength in order to make it to that line, when we discover that we can't take another step on our own, that we need the assistance of some power beyond ourselves, someone to come alongside of us, someone sometimes to carry us, God is there. In just a couple of weeks, we're going to be riveted to the television watching the Olympics in London, England. And I'm reminded that 20 years ago, in 1992, when the Olympics were held in Seoul, South Korea, a fascinating thing happened in the 400-meter semifinal. A British runner by the name of Derek Redmond had an experience that he did not anticipate, and he was given a gift that he did not expect. Please watch the video screen.
When troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. Stormy seas, I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me.
Whatever your age, whatever your life circumstance, finish the race. Don't give up. And finish strong. And finish well. And do so with the embrace of a loving God who showers you with grace and peace and strength. More than any father could love his son, so God loves you. Amen. The peace of the Lord be with you always. I invite you to share the peace of Christ with those who are near you.
Thank you.